let's get more of a sense of what is happening in schools right now by speaking to some school leaders. Paul Gosling is the head of Exeter Road Community Primary School in Exmouth and is president of the National Association of Head Teachers. Hi, Paul.
Hello, morning, Matt.
Good to have you with us. We've got Sammy Wright, deputy head at the Southmore Academy in Sunderland. Hi, Sammy. And Evelyn Ford is head teacher at Copthall School in North London. Hi, Evelyn.
Hi there.
Just give us a sense, I'll come to each of you first of all, just to sort of sum up the impact of rising food and energy bills, what impact that's having and the difficult decisions you're having to make. You first of all, Paul, down in Devon.
Yeah, thank you. Well, food costs are going up. For example, our chicken's gone up by a third. So you have to start making choices to the school. We provide school meals for our children, and we also provide school meals to another school. Now, we are really trying not to increase the cost to parents, particularly those paid. And at the moment, the school is soaking up the difference. So that the food costs are going up. The cost to cook the food, the gas bill, is also going up. And the margins are getting smaller. We have staff to pay out of the money we get for school meals as well. Now, we are really, really trying to hold out and not put our school meals up because we know the families in our communities are already under their own pressures for food bills at home and energy bills. And therefore, the schools in the middle are soaking up those costs at the moment. But it can't go on. Something needs to be done.
And the other thing, Paul, is that particularly infants who get free school meals, you don't have an option for putting up prices for them because they're not paying for it.
No, we get, I think, £2.34 is what we get from the government for those meals, but the value of that is going down and down. So we have to pay the staff costs out of that and the food costs, and it's not enough as it was really. It was barely enough, and now it's really, really difficult to actually balance the food budget in the school, and that's just one of many budgets that we're having to look to square at the moment.
So what does that mean for children going in and getting their school dinners? Does it mean they're going to get less chicken, less meat, smaller portions?
No, for many, many children, that meal is really, really important, and it needs to be nutritionally balanced. It needs to be filling because, they need their tanks full for the learning that they do through the school day. So we're not reducing full portions, and I don't know a school leader who is actually. There might be some anecdotes around, but I any school leader that I've spoken to, and I speak to many, there's no way we're reducing school portion sizes, but we are. Something's got to give at some point in terms of, do we raise the cost of those meals, particularly the ones that are paid for? But you're quite right. The infants are and children on free school meals, which is about 45% of my school, of the children on free school meals anyway. The money we get from the government for those isn't keeping pace anywhere near with the rapidly rising food costs and the rapidly rising energy costs.
That's the picture in Devon then. Let's go to North London now. Evelyn Ford, head teacher at Copthall School. Talk us about the picture there. Paul is saying something's got to give. What is it that you think will have to give?
100% echo what Paul has just said. Everything that's happening in North London, and I think in schools across the country, exactly what Paul has just said. I'm not quite sure where the Education Secretary felt this headroom that he kind of alluded to in school budgets is coming from. And we have to look at absolutely everything. Obviously, our young people are at the centre of absolutely everything, making sure that, they are well fed, that we can keep the heating on in the winter months and so on and so forth. But Paul's absolutely right. Something has got to give. And I know that there are heads who are thinking about redundancy, looking at class sizes. What does that look like? Because our budgets are, really, really tight. And I think what a lot of leaders will say is, we could see this coming down the pipeline months ago. It feels like we're sleepwalking into a massive crisis. And again, it goes back to school leaders who have got to think strategically in terms of picking up the cost for this. And I don't think that's okay. I think that the government need to look at themselves and think about, we are going through a really challenging time, just nationally. And actually, what we are here to do is really to give that brilliant education to our young people, that whole wraparound pastoral care. And now we're thinking about, well, which energy provider can we go to that's going to give us the best deal? And I reached out to some Barnet heads, and one of them messaged me to say that they have been projected an estimate of a 300% increase in their energy costs.
Wow.
That is unsustainable, and something will give. And what we sincerely hope that it's not about the teaching and learning, whereby you then end up cutting staff costs.
But where can you, I suppose there's a point you're making, Evelyn, that you're there to sort of run the school and make sure that education is good, not, constantly trying to rerun the budget and try and save some money. But do you then have to start, you talk about redundancies. I mean, it's a 300%.
That's a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a reality. And as Paul said, we're looking at the cost of one teacher, and that's a lot of money, which will then impact on teaching and learning and the fabulous outcomes that we're all striving to achieve for our young people. So actually, I don't think it should be us making that decision. I think it's about the DfE, the government, looking at this massive problem and saying, we need to do this for our young people, put our children at the heart of the decision making.
I'm sure that they'll be listening. And actually, the point, Evelyn, when he was talking about the headroom, I really pressed Nadeem Zahawi on this. He said he'd got some extra headroom in his budget. And I said, well, that's very good. It's very good. It's very good you've got that. Are you going to give it to the schools? And he just kept saying he was looking at it. So I did do my best. I did my best for you. Let's bring in Sammy Wright then, Deputy Head at Southmoor Academy in Sunderland. Sammy, the picture there with you, what's the impact of rising bills having on your school?
I mean, I think it's a similar impact. But what I would like to talk about actually is I've been recently visiting a lot of schools around our area and across the country actually for a new book that I'm researching, and I've had some really interesting insights into the different pressures that different schools have. So if I give you an example, I visited the first school, quite a small rural school, with a building that was so old that their insulation was made of horsehair and had compacted, so effectively was not working at all. Because of the nature of the building, their radiators were also in the ceiling, and that was the only place they could get them. So in terms of the bills, actually the fact that the school estate has degraded so much then compounds all the issues around heating. And if you also then think about the difference of scale in different schools, again, if you're in a very small school, you have much less of a margin for error. So there's all sorts of different pressures to happen in different circumstances. And what I would point to as well on top of this is that as we've kind of gotten more distance from the lockdowns, it seems to me that the biggest thing we've learned about supporting kids in the aftermath of COVID is that we have to be supporting the most knotty problems. So largely, a lot of the kids who coped okay but were a bit behind, that's really easy to catch up. But the ones who've really, really lost their engagement with school, who've really had deterioration in mental health and stuff like that, those children are in real crisis. And unfortunately, intervening with them takes a lot of intensive work. So it's not just that budgets are being squeezed, but it's that there's this real urgent doing stuff that actually demands a lot of expenditure. And unfortunately, I think that to have this squeeze coming on the back of all the things that have gone on with COVID actually means that those students who have dropped off the map, as it were, are the ones who are going to suffer the most.
And I suppose when you need that intensive work and both money, but also time and effort from teaching staff, they're not going to be able to do that if they're, try to find a better energy provider or worse, try to plug the gap of colleagues who've been made redundant.
Absolutely. And then you simultaneously have the issue coming from the other end that those kids are often the ones whose home lives are chaotic and who are impacted at home by the massive increase in cost of living. I'm actually speaking right now from an alternate provision that I'm visiting. And, here you have people who have really, really complex needs. And they need attention, they need care, And I just feel that that the pressures on top of 11, 12 years of cuts and austerity, it really becomes untenable. We need to start talking about schools as investment for the future. We need to start talking about the fact that actually, this is the first place to invest rather than the afterthought. I read somewhere that for the cost of HS2, we could rebuild the entire school estate in the UK, and that's a staggering thought. I'm not saying don't do HS2, but I'm just saying think about actually the relative costs and the relative benefits of investment in education.
Well, I really appreciate your the time of all of you, because I know you're all busy running your schools, and Sammy, you're going around the country. It's fascinating of slightly depressing insights to what is happening in some schools. That's Sammy Wright, Deputy Head at Southmore Academy in Sunderland. We also heard from Evelyn Ford, Head Teacher at Copthall School in North London, and Paul Gosling, Head Teacher of Exeter Road Community Primary School in Exmouth. He's also the President of the National Association of Head Teachers, able to bring together some of those messages about the impact that these rising food and energy bills are having on schools. So we've been discussing the impact of rising costs, bills, food bills, energy bills on schools and the way that's affecting children. Let's speak now to Robert Halfon, Conservative MP, who chairs the Education Select Committee. Morning, Robert.
Good morning. Hello.
We'll speak more broadly about the Nadeem Zahawi's education plans, but what's your assessment? Are you hearing from schools that they are struggling? We're hearing from schools that their energy bills going up 100%, 200%, 300%. That's a couple of teachers in some cases. Are you concerned, and do you want the government to step in?
Well, I am concerned because clearly we've had 2 difficult years of the pandemic. I'm glad the government have got an extra 7 billion for schools and 5 billion for the catch-up fund. But the problem is that with the increased energy bills, some of that extra money will be eaten up by paying for these bills. I heard the Secretary of State's interview on Friday on your programme, and he said that they will do something. I think that's incredibly important because we want extra funds to schools to be spent on frontline, on teachers and support staff, on helping kids with extra tuition, not on paying their energy bills.
And on the broader conversation I had with Nadeem Zahawi, I asked him to sort of set out his plans for schools. He talked about how he was spending lots of money, and he was focusing on skills and T levels and all of that. But one of the things that really struck me was he mentioned they took the cabinet to Stoke, and he said they were in Stoke and there was only one school in Stoke which was rated outstanding. And it struck me as interesting because the Conservatives have been in government now for 12 years. And it seems odd that we have this situation where cabinet ministers say, isn't it terrible, this situation? We're definitely going to do something about this. Do you think that Nadeem Zahawi's plans for schools rise to the occasion?
Well, I think it's important to know we've got 1.9 million more children in good or outstanding schools since 2010, but there is a lot more to be done. I support a lot of what Nadeem is doing. I definitely think he's got a grip of the department. At least he's got a plan, schools, skills and families. Where I kind of question the government is I think that there needs to be much more done on social injustice in education. So, for example, we've got a children in care report coming out today, but just 7% of children in care get good passes in English and maths. We know that white working class boys and girls, and we did a report on this in our committee, underperform at every stage of the education system, right through from early years to university, compared to almost every other ethnic group. We have just 5% of excluded children get a good pass in English and maths. You have something like 40 children excluded every school day, one way or another. There are enormous social injustices. There's also the issue I have with Nadeem, and I argue about this all the time, is that the government always talk about a knowledge-rich education. I absolutely believe that people need to learn their times tables, maths, English, but we also need skills in our education system, and the government's focus is just post-16 skills. So if you look at design and technology, for example, that's declined by 70%, the take-up of design and technology since 2010. And this is not an unconservative thing. Margaret Thatcher actually introduced design and technology in the first place. We face the 4th industrial revolution. We're going to a world of automation and artificial intelligence. These kind of subjects are very, very important, yet the government doesn't include it in the baccalaureate. And they gave a few £1 million to fund Latin. I get it, I understand it, why they've done that, but why not fund things like design and technology, and why not make it your priority to address the social injustices of vulnerable cohorts not doing well at all in our education system? And I think they need to do more about that. I think that the schools bill can't just focus on academic capital, it's got to focus on social capital as well.
Robert Halfon, really good to speak to you as ever, to get your take on that. And I think it's probably something we should come back to again, because we've had such a reaction to the discussion about what's going on in schools right now. Robert Halfon, Conservative MP, who chairs the Education Select Committee. Thanks very much for joining us on Times Radio.